Adam Gase is an American football coach in the National Football League, widely recognized for his offensive background and his time as a head coach with multiple franchises. Born on March 29, 1978, in Ypsilanti, Michigan, Gase began his coaching career at an unusually young age. While still a student at Michigan State University, he worked as a student assistant for the football program. After graduating, he followed head coach Nick Saban to Louisiana State University, where he served as a graduate assistant and recruiting assistant from 2000 to 2002, gaining early exposure to high-level program building and organizational structure. Gase entered the National Football League in 2003 with the Detroit Lions as a scouting assistant, before transitioning to offensive assistant and later quarterbacks coach. He continued building his resume with the San Francisco 49ers as an offensive assistant in 2008. His major breakthrough came with the Denver Broncos, where he served as wide receivers coach from 2009 to 2010 before becoming quarterbacks coach and eventually offensive coordinator. In 2013, as offensive coordinator, Gase oversaw a historic Broncos offense that set the National Football League record for most points scored in a single season and advanced to Super Bowl 48. That season significantly elevated his profile as one of the league's rising offensive minds. In 2015, he became offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears, where he helped stabilize and improve the offense under quarterback Jay Cutler. Gase's success as a coordinator led to head coaching opportunities. In 2016, he was hired as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, becoming one of the youngest head coaches in the National Football League at the time. In his first season, the Dolphins posted a 10-6 record and reached the playoffs, ending a lengthy postseason drought. However, the team struggled to maintain consistency in subsequent seasons, and Gase finished his Miami tenure with a 23-25 record before being dismissed after the 2018 season. He was then hired as head coach of the New York Jets in 2019. The Jets went 7-9 in his first year, but declined sharply to 2-14 in 2020. Gase was fired after that season, concluding his Jets tenure with a 9-23 record. Throughout his career, Gase has been regarded as an offensive-minded coach, with particular emphasis on quarterback development and passing game structure. His early work in Denver, especially during the record-setting 2013 season, cemented his reputation as a creative play caller capable of designing high-scoring offenses. However, his head coaching stints were characterized by inconsistent offensive production and broader team management challenges, leading to mixed evaluations of his overall impact as a head coach in the National Football League. Denver Broncos, 2013 record-setting offense. The 2013 Denver Broncos fielded one of the most explosive offenses in National Football League history, under head coach Peyton Manning and offensive coordinator Adam Gase, with play calling and protection adjustments heavily influenced by Manning at the line of scrimmage. During the 2013 regular season, Denver set multiple league records, including 606 total points scored, which was the most in National Football League history at the time. Manning threw 55 passing touchdowns, setting a single-season record, and accumulated 5,477 passing yards, which was also a single-season record at that time. The offense averaged 37.9 points per game and 7.3 yards per play. The Broncos finished the season with a 13-3 record and advanced to Super Bowl 48. What made this offense structurally different began with pre-snap control and tempo. Manning essentially functioned as an on-field coordinator. The Broncos operated with a heavy, no-huddle tempo, extensive pre-snap motion, and full-field audible authority based on defensive leverage. By forcing defenses to declare coverage early and limiting substitution flexibility, Denver routinely exposed vanilla looks and punished disguised coverages. The offense dictated terms before the snap, which compressed defensive decision-making windows. Personnel stress was another defining element. The Broncos deployed a receiving corps that included Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, Wes Welker, and Julius Thomas, creating matchup pressure across every coverage layer. They could win on the outside through isolation at the X-receiver position, in the slot with option routes, vertically down the seams against two high safety structures, and in the red zone through pick-and-rub concepts. Every snap presented horizontal and vertical conflict for the defense, creating what can be described as schematic overload. Beyond raw yardage, the offense was structurally efficient. They produced elite expected points added per dropback, maintained a low turnover rate relative to volume, converted third downs at a high rate, and posted a strong red zone touchdown percentage. This was not empty production between the 20s. It translated directly into touchdowns rather than field goals. Efficiency, not just explosiveness, defined their dominance. Protection and timing were also critical. The ball was delivered quickly, and Manning's average time to throw ranked among the fastest in the league. This minimized sack exposure despite a high number of dropbacks. Rather than relying heavily on maximum protection schemes, the offense neutralized the pass rush through spacing, rhythm, and anticipation. However, important context remains. Despite the historic regular season, the Broncos were defeated 43-8 by the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 48. Seattle's defensive structure, built around cover three principles, press coverage on the outside, a deep middle safety, and a dominant four-man pass rush, disrupted timing and collapsed the offensive rhythm early. The game demonstrated that even historically efficient offenses can be destabilized by physical disruption and disciplined zone structure. In the broader historical view, the 2013 Broncos offense represents the peak of Manning's pre-snap command era, a prototype for modern spread-tempo National Football League attacks, and one of the clearest examples of quarterback-driven offensive architecture. It remains one of the most statistically dominant offensive seasons ever assembled. Adam Gase, career arc and fast-track rise. Adam Gase's professional ascent follows the classic young offensive mind trajectory that became highly marketable across the National Football League during the 2000s and 10s. He began coaching while still an undergraduate at Michigan State University, handling entry-level staff responsibilities that built early institutional credibility. He then followed head coach Nick Saban to Louisiana State University, positioning himself within one of the most respected coaching trees in modern football. From there, he climbed the National Football League assistant ladder with the Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers, Denver Broncos, and Chicago Bears, working under experienced offensive staffs and steadily increasing responsibility. The inflection point came in Denver when Gase became offensive coordinator for quarterback Peyton Manning. That 2013 Broncos offense scored 606 points, at the time the most in National Football League history, while Manning threw for 5,477 yards and 55 touchdowns. The combination of record-setting production and proximity to an all-time quarterback created a powerful narrative around Gase as a forward-thinking offensive architect. That resume, combined with the league-wide appetite for quarterback-centric head coaches, fast-tracked him into head coaching roles with the Miami Dolphins from 2016 through 2018 and the New York Jets from 2019 through 2020. The quarterback whisperer label, what it was based on. Gase's reputation as a quarterback developer stemmed largely from his collaboration with established veterans rather than from building a young passer from the ground up. Peyton Manning publicly emphasized how closely he and Gase worked together in Denver, reinforcing the perception that Gase played a significant role in optimizing one of the most efficient offenses ever assembled. However, by the time he was hired by the Jets, skepticism had already emerged regarding whether quarterback whisperer meant elevating elite operators or developing raw talent. The quarterbacks most often cited in his resume, Manning, Jay Cutler, and Ryan Tannehill, were already established starters when he worked with them. Sam Darnold, in New York, represented his first true ground floor developmental project. That distinction matters because maximizing an elite pre-snap processor is fundamentally different from constructing an entire offensive ecosystem for a young quarterback behind an unstable offensive line with limited roster depth. The contrast in outcomes suggests Gase may have been optimized for refinement rather than foundational construction, a pattern sometimes seen when high-level coordinators transition into head coaching roles without the broader infrastructure advantages they previously enjoyed. Personality profile in practice. There is no verified personality type classification for Gase, and online labeling is speculative at best. However, multiple credible reports describe a consistent workplace profile. He was often portrayed as intense and tightly wound in public settings. His introductory press conference with the Jets drew widespread attention for his visibly high-strung demeanor. At the same time, reports indicated that in private environments he displayed humor and a more relaxed personality that did not always surface publicly. This divergence between private and public presentation can influence perception. In the modern National Football League, the head coach functions not only as a strategist, but as a visible organizational leader. Coaches who project calm authority and relational warmth often stabilize locker room dynamics and external narratives. Fairly or not, Gase did not consistently project those chief executive officer-style traits in public settings, which may have affected credibility with media, fans, and potentially players. Adam Gase, why the head coach transition failed. 2. The film grinder identity, coordinator mindset at head coach level. Multiple reports described Adam Gase as someone who essentially lived in the film room. Late nights, isolation, obsessing over moving the ball and designing answers. That identity is a strength for an offensive coordinator. The issue is scalability. As a head coach, the job expands beyond scheme into communication rhythms, staff alignment, culture building, and visible accountability. If the primary identity remains tactical rather than integrative, blind spots can emerge. The National Football League head coach role is fundamentally an ecosystem manager, not just a play designer. 3. Communication and locker room connection issues. This became the most damaging thread in post-mortem reporting. Multiple accounts indicated he struggled to connect with the locker room. One player was quoted as saying he won't take the blame for anything. Jamal Adams publicly criticized his leadership approach, noting that Gase did not consistently address the full team and sometimes left halftime adjustments to assistants. When a head coach is perceived as distant or non-accountable, message decay accelerates. Leadership credibility in the National Football League is heavily perception-based. Once players believe standards are uneven or that responsibility is deflected, the culture fractures quickly. 4. Siloed operations and integration problems. Reports suggested the divide between offense and defense was more pronounced during his tenure than in prior regimes. The infamous late-game cover zero defensive call during a Jets loss became symbolic of broader stewardship issues. Whether or not that single play was fair to isolate the larger critique centered on integration. The head coach's job is structural alignment. Offense, defense, special teams, personnel, and game management operating under one unified logic. When silos form, it often signals that the head coach is functioning more like a coordinator than an overseer. 5. Tight-knit staff continuity, asset or liability. Gase previously emphasized small room chemistry and continuity, particularly in Denver. Internal disagreement focused on improving the offense can be healthy. However, when that preference becomes insularity, broader organizational alignment can suffer. In a head coaching role, the circle must expand beyond the offensive meeting room. The clearest causes of failure. 1. Offensive production collapsed outside Denver. If a coach is hired as an offensive guru, offensive results are the primary deliverable. In Miami, points scored ranked 17th in 2016, 28th in 2017, and 26th in 2018. With the Jets, the team ranked 31st in 2019 and 32nd in 2020, averaging just 15.2 points per game in 2020. Even accounting for roster limitations and injuries, the core value proposition, offensive efficiency, did not materialize. That is the most visible performance gap. 2. Quarterback development did not materialize. Sam Darnold's statistical output declined in 2020, throwing for 2,208 yards with 9 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, compared to 3,024 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions in 2019. Fair debates exist about roster strength and protection issues, but the broader expectation was visible growth. Because Gase's brand centered on quarterback development, the absence of a developmental curve became a reputational turning point. 3. Leadership and accountability perception. In both Miami and New York, reporting suggested players questioned accountability and communication standards. In Miami, some players reportedly believed certain individuals were held to different standards. In New York, the post-mortem coverage highlighted dissatisfaction and disconnect. When the locker room believes the head coach does not absorb responsibility publicly or address issues directly, trust erodes rapidly. That erosion often precedes performance decline. 4. Organizational alignment and power struggles. In Miami, trust reportedly deteriorated between Gase and ownership, particularly around roster control and philosophical direction. Win now versus long-term rebuild. In New York, his early tenure overlapped with front office turbulence, including the dismissal of the general manager shortly after the draft. A head coach can survive talent limitations. It is far harder to survive misalignment and distrust at the top of the organization. 5. The core transition never fully happened. The meta layer ties everything together. His identity remained heavily rooted in scheme, film, and ball movement. The head coaching role demands people management, accountability systems, communication clarity, and integration across departments. When that transition does not occur, the pattern becomes predictable. Offense underperforms, staff silos emerge, locker room connection weakens, and public perception amplifies instability rather than stabilizing it. A fairer, balanced view. To contextualize fairly, Miami did go 10-6 and reach the playoffs in his first season. Both Miami and the Jets operated with significant roster instability, particularly along the offensive line and at quarterback health and continuity. Ownership philosophy mismatches also played a role. However, many coaches inherit unstable rosters. The consistent thread in reporting was not simply talent deficiency, but that his leadership style did not scale to the broader demands of the head coaching position. Based on reporting, not a clinical diagnosis or formal personality assessment, Adam Gase has consistently been described as a high-task focus, high-intensity coach with a strong film grinder identity and deep schematic detail orientation. His public demeanor has often been characterized as lower in outward warmth or large room charisma, with humor and personality reportedly showing up more in private settings than in press conferences or team-wide addresses. Multiple accounts also pointed to communication and accountability gaps, with players and coaches describing situations in which the team was not consistently addressed directly, or where blame-taking felt insufficient. Broadly, the profile that emerges is one featuring more elite coordinator traits than chief executive officer-style head coach traits. That type of coach can thrive alongside an elite quarterback and within a strong organizational structure, as seen in Denver, but can struggle when required to be the primary culture driver, integrator, and quarterback builder, as was the case with the Jets. From a tactical standpoint, Gase's offenses at their best were designed to manufacture matchup advantages through formation and motion, provide quarterbacks with first-read answers and hot throws, and then generate explosive plays when defenses overreacted. The system was not built to live on long, pure progression drop-back football. It aimed instead to manipulate defensive rules and punish predictable reactions. The gap between that design philosophy and later execution is central to understanding why the approach faltered in New York. In Denver during 2013 and 2014, the offense operated as a form of constraint football, with Peyton Manning functioning as the on-field supercomputer. The 2013 Broncos set a National Football League record with 606 points, while Manning set single-season yardage and touchdown records. Structurally, the offense frequently used screens as bait to trigger underneath defenders before attacking vertically behind them. A common concept involved trips formations in a 3-by-1 alignment, where the outside receiver showed quick screen action while interior receivers sold blocks and then released vertically. The underlying idea was simple: exploit defensive coaching rules by first triggering them and then attacking the void created by their reaction. Denver also leaned heavily on 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, 3-by-1 formations, and bunch alignments, particularly in the red zone. These designs required rapid leverage identification, protection control, and precision timing, traits Manning possessed at an elite level. He was arguably the ideal operator for an offense predicated on fast, correct decisions and punishing defensive structure. With the Chicago Bears and Miami Dolphins, the system evolved into more visibly modern elements, including bunch formations, movement passes, and run-pass option concepts. Film analysis highlighted Gase's use of bunch alignments to manufacture deep corner routes against man coverage and pressure looks, scripted shot plays designed to attack specific defensive tendencies. He also leaned into bootlegs and play-action movement passes to halve the field, simplify reads, and create high-low route structures on the rollout side. Run-pass options provided built-in answers against certain box counts or leverage alignments. In Miami specifically, the offense incorporated pre-snap motion, flood concepts that overloaded one side of the field, and pick or rub concepts to create separation, particularly near the goal line. Under this structure, Ryan Tannehill posted a 67.1% completion rate, 7.7 yards per attempt, and a 19-12 touchdown-to-interception ratio in 13 games during 2016. While that does not prove the system permanently solved quarterback development, it demonstrates that the framework could raise efficiency when personnel, protection, and structure aligned. The Jets' version, however, showed sharper tactical decline. In 2019, the Jets ran 11 personnel on 64.4% of snaps and used 3 or more wide receivers on over 72% of plays, yet averaged only 4.57 yards per play. Structurally, the offense leaned spread and 11 personnel, but increasingly lacked dynamism. Film review described the passing attack as overly lateral, with heavy short area reliance. In one early 2020 game, Jamison Crowder accounted for more than a third of the team's targets, illustrating the concentration of quick, underneath distribution. A lateral offense demands elite spacing, strong yards after catch ability, and consistent protection. Without those, efficiency collapses quickly. There were also games in which no passes traveled more than 20 yards downfield, effectively compressing the field and requiring flawless short-game execution. Pre-snap motion usage ranked near the bottom of the league early in 2020 at 22.6%. Despite research suggesting motion correlates with offensive success by clarifying coverage and creating leverage advantages. The Jets also ranked 25th in play-action rate and near the bottom in explosive pass plays. Motion and play-action are widely viewed as quarterback-friendly tools, being low in both forces a young passer to win in static, pure drop-back environments. These structural choices interacted differently with Tannehill and Sam Darnold. Tannehill benefited from motion, defined reads, and movement concepts when the run game and protection supported them. However, critiques suggested that the run game identity was not consistently married to the passing game in a way that created sustainable, easy throws. Zone-based run systems, for example, require repetition and cohesion. Inconsistency there can undermine the credibility of play action. For Darnold, the environment was harsher. In 2020, across 12 games, he threw for 2,208 yards with a 59.6% completion rate, 9 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Combine low motion, reduced play-action usage, lateral passing emphasis, and limited explosive design, and the margin for error narrows dramatically. For a young quarterback behind an unstable offensive line and within a rebuilding roster, that combination proved difficult. Even Gase publicly acknowledged that he had not done enough to accelerate Darnold's development. In summary, the philosophical blueprint: leverage manipulation, constraint design, and matchup engineering can be highly effective with an elite processor in a stable ecosystem. The problems emerged when that same blueprint was asked to carry developmental weight, overcome roster instability, and function without elite quarterback execution or strong organizational integration. One anecdote that reflects the broader philosophical issue came from Le'Veon Bell, who publicly mocked and criticized repeated calls of 21 dive on 2nd and 10, specifically a shotgun halfback dive, meant to gain a few yards and set up 3rd and manageable. Whether Bell's frustration was entirely fair or not, the example aligns with a larger tactical criticism. If an offense is consistently playing for manageable downs rather than aggressively hunting explosive advantages, and doing so from relatively static formations, it is effectively betting on repeated execution wins over the defense. That is a narrow margin strategy. It can work with elite quarterback processing, high-end protection, and receivers who consistently win, but it becomes fragile when the roster lacks top-tier stability across those areas. The broader tactical summary of why it failed is less about personality and more about schematic drift. At its best, the core of the system was built around constraint football and matchup engineering, using motion, floods, pick concepts, and screens that converted into vertical shots when defenses overreacted. However, with the Jets, The structure often shifted towards static 11 personnel groupings and short area passing concepts. Sustaining drives through that approach requires near-perfect spacing, timing, and protection. At the same time, the league trend was toward increased pre-snap motion and heavier play-action usage, both of which statistically correlate with offensive efficiency. The Jets ranked near the bottom of the league in motion early in 2020 and were 25th in play-action rate that season. When motion and play-action, two of the most common quarterback-friendly tools, are minimized, a developing quarterback like Sam Darnold is asked to win in more difficult, pure drop-back situations. That combination proved especially unforgiving, and it helps explain why the system's original leverage-based philosophy did not translate into sustainable production in New York.